Hello, welcome to Designs by Arcadia. So today we're going to do some work on this console table. It needs some TLC. Now I picked this up on Marketplace for the princely sum of £10. It was only in the same town as me and it fit in the back of the car. So I thought, well, I'd be rude not to really. Now it's not a terribly old unit. It's probably a fair few years old, but it's certainly not vintage by any stretch. It's made of solid wood, which is an absolute bonus as well, especially given that overall it's very solid, neat and tidy. Now, it does have a nice little bottom shelf there, perhaps for some little little nest of crates or something like that, and storage. And there's also a couple of little drawers in there, again solid wood as well. And it even has a couple of nice black handles there that you can see, but they are loose, they are a bit wonky. We'll come on to the issues with this unit in a minute, but suffice it to say, it looks like it could be quite a nice little unit. It's a bit dated now and it certainly needs a clean, it needs a refresh, and it's actually going to get painted and some new ironmongery, I think. So let's take a closer look at it now and see what we need to do. Okay, so as I say, it's in pretty nice condition overall. It's generally quite solid, but there's a few little jobs to do. The most noticeable one is the ink stain on the top there. It's quite a pronounced stain actually, and it is a printer ink as well. The previous owner told me that this was used as their computer desk and they had an ink spillage. So they've tried sanding it out to the point where actually it's, because the pine is obviously a soft wood, it's actually kind of formed quite some big undulations in the grain. So it needs filling anyway over the top of that. Plus also there is a coffee ring or some sort of drinks or vase mark as well. And you can see from the lighter colours on the top that it's already been sanded. Like I say, they've tried to sand out the stain or stains, but to no avail. So it needs filling and painting anyway. Also, it's quite knotty pine, so the legs in particular have some large knots in them, and they will need a little bit of filling just around the edges of the knots, and we'll certainly need to use some decent primer undercoat on that to stop any tannins or knot resins from bleeding through. So there's that to do. And the drawers are pretty good actually, they're okay for what they are, but the ironmongery is loose, but I'm going to replace that anyway and put something a bit fresher on it. Plus also, I noticed that because of the mass production of this, it's not terribly uniform on the top. It is a solid wooden top, as I say, but there's a chamfer, intentional or otherwise, along the leading edge and in fact down one of the sides. It's only like a little V chamfer, but it only goes about halfway, weirdly. So you've got like a shallow V chamfer on one side and a completely square cut on the other end of the same piece of wood. So that needs looking at. I think what I'll do is I'll route a new groove across to make everything uniform. It's not so obvious when it's just wood like this, but when it's all painted and has different reflections, the facets of the chamfer on the edge will look a bit weird if it's not uniform across the whole top. So basically, as I say, we're going to try and sand or grind out some of that extra ink to stop us having to worry about it bleeding through as much. We'll fill the gaps, tidy up any gaps or holes that are in it. We'll get some primer on there, rechamfer the front edge, as I say, replace the ironmongery and get some paint on. Right, first thing first then, let's give it a decent clean. Okay, I've given everything a clean down, let it dry, and obviously there's still a lot of that ink in there, and given, as I say, if I just run the chisel across, you may or may not hear that, but it's catching it on the grain because there's so much sanding already happened. So I'm just going to get some of this away, I think. It may seem counterintuitive to take a chisel to a flat surface that you're going to see, but to be honest, like I say, it needs sanding, it needs filling anyway, so I'm going to just get the worst of this out. Gives the primer less work to do, less risk of it coming through later, And also, ironically, the deeper the hole that it's got to go through, the better the filler will actually bite anyway. So I'm just going to come around the other side now. But you can see, like I say, all needs doing. I won't get all of it out. I won't get all of it out, but obviously as I keep saying, the least of the ink that's left behind, the better. So all this stuff can go. Anyway, I'm going to just keep clearing this away and we'll get some filler in, I think. There we go, that's the majority of it out now. You can see all the shavings there. So should be able to get some filler in there now. And there's just less work for the shellac primer to do, trying to seal in that little bit versus trying to deal with all that ink there. Right, enough about the ink. Let's crack on then, get some filler in there. So just made up some fairly strong P38 filler. I'm expecting this to need a few passes anyway, because it's a deep hole, so I'd rather let it set in a few nice little layers. So we're just going to leave that to do its thing. Leave it slightly proud so that we can sand it back into the surface later. Okay folks, back inside very quickly. Basically the weather's quite changeable this week, sunshine and showers, and I had to pop out for a few minutes, so didn't want to leave everything outside. Essentially though, just giving everything a quick sand over the top, and also just put a second layer of filler just in a little gap where we did the ink. We said it'd take a couple of goes to get it nice, so I'm just going to go and finish sanding that down now and giving everything else a once over. So before I sand the drawer fronts, just want to get the knobs off. I've actually got one off already, to be honest. It was already loose. In fact, there we go. So yeah, oops, there we go. Yeah, a little bit medieval looking, not really, you know, what we're looking for on this project. They're okay, they'll be all right for something. But we'll put some fresh ones on. Now, just while I'm looking at this though, there is also what looks like printer ink on the inside of this drawer. Now, yeah, there's some of that green look as well, so I need to be careful with that. But what I will do, I think, is rather than try and sand that out, one option is going to be to put a drawer liner in. But I think, given that these are just screws on the ends, I'm going to try, see if I can just potentially turn it over. Right, here we go. Perfect. I'll clean this bit out here, but at least that'll minimise the damage a bit. At least it won't be in the bottom of the drawer. So I'll get this back together now, and that'll be good stuff. You may wonder why I'm not using an electric or a cordless screwdriver. Truth be told, I haven't got one. My battery's packed up. Well, no, that's not true actually. The battery was sort of not really holding its charge that well. It was really old, and just when I managed to get the battery reconditioned, the actual clutch went on the drill. So time for a new one. And to be honest, at the moment, I don't want to keep dragging cables along the place with my corded drill. I've been using that a lot during the workshop sort out. And do check out those videos, by the way. We've got the first 3 parts of the workshop tidy and sort out already done. so do check those out on the channel. Also, this particular room that I'm working in now is ultimately going to be our proper furniture workshop and spray booth as well. So we'll be invested in a shop vac for this. We're getting a decent air filter for in here, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, keep an eye out. But at the moment, it's a nice day in between the showers. So I'm just chilling here, getting this done. The paint is on order, and I already have the knobs that I want for this. So during this little monologue, basically, hope you're just enjoying spending 5 minutes with me. Thank you for your time. So what I am going to do next though, thinking of these screws, is just go around the unit generally. It's pretty good now, it's sanded down. I think there will be a requirement for some glazing putty as well, because some of the gentle sanding has exposed some deeper marks, which I'll show you in a minute. So we'll get that on there. The plan today then is to get the thing primed, and then the paints will be here in the next day or two. And just before we do put the primer coat on, it's quite prudent in this particular unit to check that all the screws and fastenings are nice and tight. This one is a sort of assembled, screwed together piece rather than too many glues and dowels. So the last thing we want to do is find ourselves in a position where we paint the furniture and then all the joints crack where we've painted them because it wasn't fastened together properly. So all that remains is to give a final wipe over with a microfiber cloth to remove any residual dust, and we're good to prime. So we're using Zinsser Bin Shellac primer here, and the reason for that primarily is because we've got some knots in the wood, and I want to make sure that the resins don't come through or anything like that. Give us a nice little coat, a nice base to be able to start our paint later. Coat of primers on, just a couple of quick jobs I want to do. One is fill in some of the little panel gaps with some caulking, which I'll show you in a minute. But first, I've got some dolphin glaze here. Now this is basically like P38. But it's a super fine filler. And it's for minor imperfections, scratches, that kind of thing. So it's super fine, and I'm just going out of my way to look for some little holes now to fill. So I'm just going to do that real quick, try and get the surface as smooth as I can, ready for painting. But the next job then is there's some little panel gaps just along the edges just there. This isn't so premium cabinetry, but if I get this in the right light, yeah, you can't really even see it, but there's the tiniest little gaps. I'm just not terribly happy with that, because the problem with little gaps is when you paint them, oh, there you go, there it is, look. Even though I've screwed everything together as tight as it will go, the problem is if you don't fill that, what will happen is some of the paint may stick, some of it won't, and you'll get like an intermediate sort of like crack, paint, crack, daylight, paint, and it just looks a mess. So best thing to do is just run a nice little sealant or caulk in there, and that'll give us a homogenised finish. And then what we'll do, just give this a gentle sand down then, and get ready for a second coat of primer. So I've got some decorator's caulk just in here, and the plan is not to put much in at all. Literally going to put just the merest smidge, and to be honest, a bit of a wet finger job on there, and that's it, done. And I'll carry on around any of the other joints that need doing, and I'll get rid of the daylight, and then once it's painted it will have a much more professional finish to it. go, it's coming on quite nicely now. The dolphin glaze is hardening and the cork is setting as well now, so we'll just give it a little while, wait for the first coat of primer to properly dry and harden along with the filler and what have you, and we give this a nice gentle little hand sand, and then we'll get our second coat of primer on and call it a day for today and leave it overnight to all harden nicely, ready for painting in the next day or so. Okay, well, it was sanded down and I've just given it a second coat of primer. I've noticed there's a few more little imperfections I'd quite like to get rid of. You can see a couple of nicks down in there. There's one just down in there. Tiny little crack within the actual sort of substrate of the wood just there, like literally a hair. So it's not really noticeable, but if you're looking for it, of course it is. There's also a that little nick there. I mean, there's my finger, and you know, there's nothing, you barely ever see that. But again, same difference. But the main thing as well though is I've decided, see this groove in the front of the actual faceplate there? Now I was going to leave that, to be honest. That was already in there, it's a manufacturing sort of remnant or artifact, and I didn't mind the shadow gap per se, but I noticed, you see there, it's flush, and then there it's got that kind of groove back in it all the way along. Now if that groove had been literally all the way along, I'd have left it in, but it's starting to bug me now. Now I've got two coats on and a unified coat of paint. I just think that the only thing to do really is to fill this after all. So we've got a flush edge. So I'm going to wait for this to dry now, and then I'll get the second lot of dolphin glaze on, go through those couple of little nicks and indentations and what have you, try and catch it from as many angles as I can, and yeah, like I say, final dolphin glaze, let that go off, and then we'll be in business ready for some paint. So great news guys, the paint has just arrived. So let's see what we've got. Always exciting times when the paint comes. So we've actually gone for one this time, and it's called Silver Sage. And what it is, it's kind of, well, you'll see it in a minute anyway, but it's quite a calming colour, not a white, but kind of like a pale greeny grey. So not too sort of beachy as it were. I've tried to make it more sort of a generic. It can be used for hallways, bedrooms, bathrooms, that kind of thing. Quite a neutral colour to give the piece of furniture a bit more general appeal really, and give it the best chance of selling. So let's take a little look at it now. Oh, it's perfect, just the job that is. It's lovely. It's like a kind of greeny cream colour, I guess. Very nice. I reckon that'll be just the job. So what I'll do anyway is give that a bit of a stir, and I've got a clean pot here, and then I'll add a touch of water to it as well, sieve it all through basically, and yeah, we'll get that in the gun and start spraying. Happy days. So I'm pretty happy with that consistency now. So I've got the respirator handy now, but I'm going to go get the compressor fired up, load up the gun, and let's get going. Okay, very nearly there now then, folks. Now, here's the thing. I have the knob here that I wanted to use on the drawers. Now, when I first envisaged this unit, this was exactly the knob. I already had it and I thought that would be perfect for on this. But when I've gone to just place it on loosely, I think it's overpowering and too big for the unit. Now, I picked up a pair of bedside cabinets yesterday, in fact, and they had some very nice kind of antique brass, but simpler, smaller ones. And I was looking to replace the ones on that, in fact. So that means I can now borrow on permanent loan, if you like, these ones. So instead of going for this big chunky one, which is disproportionate, I'm going to go for that one there. I think that'll look just the job. Nice. And then just finally going to dress the inside of the drawers with some Wise Owl salve in lemon verbena. Make it nice and fresh. That smell delightful, and just give it a very, very gentle sheen as well. So I'm just going to go and do that. We'll get the drawers in, and that will be the job done. So here it is then, the lovely 2-drawer table. And this really could be used for anything. A console table, it could be used in the hallway, it could be in the bedroom as a small dresser, it could be in the bathroom with some towel bales underneath. It really is a very practically sized piece of furniture. It was used previously as an office table, and it wasn't without its marks. It did have a few scuffs, and namely there was quite a ring stain on the top and indeed an ink stain which the previous owners had tried to sand out. Unfortunately, they had sanded through some of the top a little bit as well, so we did need to fill that. Also, I'm not sure if it was a manufacturing defect or just a variation, but there was a fairly uneven chamfer as well across the top. So we've routed a new V-groove all the way around to give it a cohesive look. Filled and sanded, and we've given 3 coats of Zinsser shellac primer as a really tough undercoat for this, and indeed a couple of coats of satin furniture paint. So yes, it looks fantastic, and I'm really pleased with it. Also replaced the knobs, of course, because the other ones that were on here originally were quite oppressive medieval looking things, so these new knobs are far more befitting the piece. Also dressed the inside of the drawers with some lemon furniture salve from Wise Owl, just to nourish and refresh the inside of the drawers. So there we go then, there she is, all ready for sale and ready to be enjoyed by a new owner. So thank you very much indeed for watching, hope you enjoyed it. Rachel and I have got lots of furniture videos coming up, so please do subscribe, hit the notification bell for updates as well. Plus we're also in the process of refurbishing the workshop and the spray booth and what have you, so check out the workshop progress on our other videos too. We'll be back soon, but stay safe in the meantime. All the best, and thanks again for your time today. Take care. Bye-bye.